let's see. Okay, והקרוב אליו, כרשנא שייכות, right? The whole list of the Sarei Parasu Madai. So אמר ריש לקיש, כל הפסוק הזה על שם קרבנות נאמר. כרשנא, כלום הקריבו לפניך כרים בני שנה, וכו'. So somehow from the beginning of the Megillah, there's a veiled reference, according to Chazal, there's a veiled reference to Korbanot. Okay? So what does that have to do with anything? Okay? Why are... the story of the Megillah happens in Chutz La'aretz. It happens, there's no Beit HaMikdash. Right? You find the Beit HaMikdash sort of in the tune. So you have a reference to the Beit HaMikdash, right? But you don't have Galut HaShehod B'tah, right? Right, so you have a couple of psukim from Eicha, a couple of nigunim from Eicha, which remind us that there was a Beit HaMikdash. So here they're reading into Kashana, Meres, Memuchan, etc., that the Avodat HaKorbanot somehow are important in this story. Okay, so let's see. Vinei, Shayachut HaMaamar Hazeh, Limitat Vashti. What does that have to do with the fact they mentioned the Korbanot and that Vashti died? Okay? However, she died, right? Dehitnei, well, just the Megillah never says she died, by the way. Right. But, okay? Presumably she died, at least since then, right? Okay? Mitzat Vashti, okay? Dinei, okay, Dinei is not Purim yet, okay? Dinei, Habal Shem Tov, listen to this, what the Baal Shem Tov said. It's a one-liner. I found it quoted elsewhere with different interpretations. So let's see what he does with it. Dinei Habal Shem Tov, he's right. He's in the beginning of but he's the first half of the 19th century. So the Baal Shem Tov is, could be almost, I don't know, 70, 80 years earlier. He's already, the Sheiluach is, and it was written is 100 years later. See, they had Masorot of what the Baal Shem Tov said, right? The Baal Shem Tov Amar al Aruma v'lo ba'a, right? This is already Chazal. All it says is the Melech was mitzaveh, right? Lahavi, right? Lahavi et Vashti Malka beketer malchut, right? But Chazal say that he commanded her to come naked, right?
With nothing but
the keter malchut. Okay, so what did the Baal Shem Tov say about that? He said al aruma v'lo ba'a. On that it says v'lo ba'a. What does that mean? Shezeh ha'inyan aruma, quote unquote, nakedness, and you have to put it in quotation marks, Adian lo ba. She's not come yet. We're still waiting for her, right? Ad kan l'shono. That's pretty cryptic. Right? He said that the issue of nakedness has not yet arrived. Okay? What does that mean? Okay, so here we get to what's called Torah Levushim. That, okay, it goes back to Torah Tzimtzum, right? You have to go back to Sheshis Bereshis and before, right? Before the base of Bereshis, right? That the first act of creation is self-limitation, right? In order for me to have a relationship with someone else, the first thing I have to do is restrain myself in order to recognize that there's somebody else here, right? If I'm all over the other person, right, then I'm not really, quote-unquote, giving them space, and that's why it's interesting that the metaphor is a spatial metaphor. Talking about the Ein Sof was memale kol almin, right? It filled all the space, and God had to retract the light, right? So it's a spatial metaphor. It's not really space that we're talking about, but people talk that way because your teenage kids say, "Give me space." Right? Some of you don't have teenage kids yet. Some of you were just teenagers recently, right? So you might remember saying it yourself to your parents, right? So the issue of delimiting the Creator to give space to the creature, right, is what Torah Tzimtzum is about. Now, part of the Tzimtzum, it's not all or nothing. The parent isn't either totally absent or totally there. God is not either totally absent or totally there. There's ways which God reveals himself. He has to limit himself and reveal whatever can be grasped by human beings. Right? The same way, in a sense, there are things, my kids ask me questions, right? So they're not going to understand. I'll give you an example. My 10-year-old asked me once, it was like a year or two ago, it was in the Parashat of Bereshit. So he said, it's like Shabbos morning, right, out of the blue, who wrote Sefer Bereshit? Right? So I asked him, like, what do you mean? Like, what's your question? So he says, well, Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't there. Right? Okay. So, what am I going to get into it? It's like I have to go to shul in 5 minutes. Okay? So I just said, I gave him the standard frum answer. Right? I said, oh, God told him about it. Okay? Okay. So that was tzimtzum on my part. Right? I can't get into it, and I think he won't understand it. So I tell him what he can understand. God told him about it, but I misread it because he looked at me like I was a blooming idiot. And he said, Abba, you say God told him. It's not so simple. Oh, yeah, okay. I'll have to sit down and we'll have a longer conversation about it. Right? But, so I tried. It was an unsuccessful tzimtzum. Right? But what tzimtzum is when you translate something which is inside of you, which to some degree is ineffable, but you translate it into something that somebody else can understand. So I take, let's say I have some feeling, and I translate that feeling into words. So the words are a levush, they're a garment for that feeling. If they're not real garments for the feeling, then there's no life in the words. Right? The light, what animates the words is the neshama of the words. Right? So I put myself into the word. This is standard Baal Shem Tov in Teva, Tzohar Tasela Teva. Right? Make a window. What? You knew you were thinking. He has its whole mysticism of words. How you put yourself into the word. It's a meditation. Okay? Because the word is the kli. Language is the instrument by which people touch each other, right? So it's one of the instruments, right? So language is a tzimtzum of what's going on inside of me, okay? So the first act of I'll give you another example. This is a beautiful example of what tzimtzum needs to be. There's a phrase that the Beit Yaakov uses. Beit Yaakov is the son of the Mashilach. So he has this thing about planting. Right? If I want the earth to give me sustenance, what do I have to do? I have to hit it, right? I have to plow it. I have to put seeds in it. I have to nurture it. I have to water it, right? That's what you have to do. That, in a sense, is the language that the earth understands. He says, he has this phrase, it blew me away. He says, Ki ha'adama eina mevina et tza'akat ha'adam. If I would say to the earth, give me food, the earth wouldn't hear it, right? So you have to do a tzimtzum, right? You have to do a tzimtzum of what culminates in the olam ha'ma'aseh of putting the seed in the earth and nurturing it and watering it begins with a desire for food, with my feeling of hunger, with my desire to feed my family. But the earth doesn't understand that. The earth understands having a seed in it and being watered. So there's a tzimtzum that happened. My desires have to go through a translation so that the object, the other, can understand what I want. Right? So that's a levush. In a sense, putting the action of putting the seed in the ground is a levush for my desire to live. But the earth doesn't understand that. So this tzimtzum, so the earth understands, right? I think it's almost a poetic way. When I saw that line, Ki ha'adama eina mevina et tza'akat ha'adam. Okay? So in a sense, anachnu lo mevinim et tza'akat ha'kadosh baruch hu. So in a sense, so we are that adama. We're from the adama, and God has to be mitzamtzeh, so that we should understand something. Okay? Okay. You'll see what this has to do with nakedness in a second. Okay? V'ha'inyan bazeh, ki Hashem yitbarach natan lahem liYisrael Torah u'mitzvot. And this is very important. Shehein levushim. שעל ידם יוכלו להשיג עצמותו יתברך. In this is the entire machlokus between Hasidim and Misnagdim. The Torah, according, again, this is not uniquely Me'ashilach on this point. The Torah is a levush. It is an expression or a translation of God's presence in the world that we can grasp. It is not ultimate. Okay? It is based on what we can understand. Okay? That's why you have these ideas, Ramban ala Torah. Let's look normative Judaism if you don't like the Me'ashilach. The Ramban ala Torah says in his Hakdama that what?
Ramban is normative Judaism?
I think so. It's more normative than the Rosh. That's something else. So he still represents normative Judaism. They teach it in the Gush. It must be normative Judaism. So the Ramban says that the Torah was Eish Choral Gabe Eish Levana. Right? In a sense, he wants to know, it's like it has to do with the language of Ech and the Get, why the Torah doesn't start with Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. Start with Ech. Right? He says because the Torah came before Moshe Rabbeinu, because it's Eish Choral Gabe Eish Levana, and there's an infinite possibility of combination of letters. Right? So in a sense, that's called the Torah Keduma, the primordial Torah. And the Torah that we have, whenever you do a tzimtzum, whenever you translate something, you eliminate some possibilities and accentuate others. That's what it means when you say something gets lost in the translation. Right? A translator has multiple possibilities of interpreting a text. But when they translate it, they're going to take one which is near Elo, the most, which seems the best for the context that they're interested in, right? And they eliminate, that's a tzimtzum. You had more possibilities. And now you're down to one, right? So the Torah, the way we have it, is a tzimtzum of the Torah Ein Sofi, which is something else, the Eish Choral Gabe Eish Levana, right? And it divides up into the words, to the letters, and the words, and the psukim, and the parshiot. That's one possible Torah. Okay? That's Ramban. Okay? So so the Torah is a tzimtzum. The Torah belongs to the world of the tzimtzum. It does not precede the world of the tzimtzum. It is an instrument which facilitates the tzimtzum. It's where God is mitztamtzem into. Okay? This is very different, for example, than the Nefesh HaChaim. The Nefesh HaChaim, if you look in Shar Daled, that's like the theology of the Litvish yeshivas. The Nefesh HaChaim says, the Machloket is in Kabbalah, he says that the Torah originates before the Olam HaAtzilut. It is before the world of the Sfirot, before the Tzimtzumim. The first thing that's other than God is the Torah. And then he calls the Torah Elokut Mamash. Okay? So the Torah does not belong to the world of the Tzimtzum. The Torah is this Platonic ideal. Right? That's how the Rav, for example, writes about the Torah. Right? But they're looking at the Torah as Levushim, part of the world of the Sfirot, part of the way the translation of God in the world, which is by necessity limited, and that's how we get to God. Okay? All right. This is still what does have to do with Vashti, we don't know yet. Okay? So he says, Ki Hashem Yirach Natan Lahem Yisrael Torah Mitzvot, Shem Levushim, Sha'al Yadam Yuchlu Lahasig עצמותו Yitbarach. Ki Ba'olam Hazeh, this is an explanation of the Tzimtzum. Ein bekoach Enoshi lahasig עצמותו yitbarach, b'lti al yedei levushim mitgashmim. Right? Physical. We only have our physical sense, not only, but we have our physical senses. So things have to be apparent to our physical senses in order for us, right? This is interesting because it's almost like David Hume, right? That you have the empirical sensory data, which is the only thing that you have, right? So you can't grasp anything except through levushim mitgashmim, okay? Ad shekol ma she'anu mikablim hu be'emtzaut halevushim, okay? Okay. Ule'et hata, this is very important. In the meantime, right? The meantime is all of our lives from the dawn of history till today, right? That's the meantime, okay? Ule'et ata, kasher yishufa shefa me'Hashem yitbarach, mashpia derech arba olamot, al yidei midah shel eser sfirot, right? Those are the levushim. The levushim are the sfirot. God, what is sfirot? Kabbalah 1.1, before Kabbalah 1.1. What is sfirot? Sfirot are aspects of God's personality. They're projections of God's personality. They're part of the world of the tzimtzum. Because God doesn't really have a personality. God is Ein Sofi, so he doesn't have a personality. Right? That's what the Rambam would say. Okay? So we agree with that. That's the Ein Sof. But in the world in which we live, we attribute characteristics to God, and that's what the world of the Sfirot is. Okay? So in a sense, there are two gods. There are two conceptions of God. There's God in all by himself, which is ineffable, beyond human comprehension, which we don't talk about except I'm talking about it, right? And even that you can't say. Right? And then there's the God that becomes known to us through the Sfirot. Okay? That, in a sense, is very interesting. In India, they also have two words for that. Brahman is being without any predicates, right? Without any without any content that you can describe, okay? And so that's in the theistic model. That's God, right? They're not all theists, right? But in the theistic model, Brahman is God, but it's God without attributes, and the God with the attributes is known as Ha'adon, right? Ishwara is the Lord, right? That's the God with attributes. They're the same, right? Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. Okay? So that's what he's talking about here. But we can only grasp God through attributes, right? Tzarich ka'et, only now, right? Sha'olam tzarich ka'et, ad shemagia la'olam hazeh, until it comes down to this world, yוכלו להשיג hashpa'ah, so we can grasp something. We need the levushim. God is fundamentally a translator, right? He's translating himself. Okay? V'gam ha'umot, okay? Gam ha'umot, that's certainly how he would have said it. V'gam ha'umot yוכלו להשיג, כי בלבוש יש להם גם כן איזה אחיזה. People, the Baal Shem Tov said, right, that people have, in addition to their physical senses, they also have spiritual senses. Right? It's not a chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov. Right? They talked about it in the Scottish Enlightenment also. They said that the religious sense is like the aesthetic sense. Right? There's a sense that is not, it's cognitive, but it's not intellectual. That there's an intuitive sense which is experienced as sitting in the heart. Right? So Goyim have that too. Right? So they understand, they can look at levushim, and they grasp something through the levushim. If not to grasp something through the levushim would be to say, you just look at something for what it is and you say that's what it is. To say something is a levush of something else, you're saying there's something beyond this. Right? So I remember somebody once wrote, the difference between a human being and a dog is if I point to something, you'll look at what I'm pointing at, but a dog will sniff the end of my finger. Right? So the dog looks at my finger as that's what it is, but you're looking at my finger as a levush, in the sense that it's pointing to something. Right? So levush means that I sense that what I'm looking at with my physical senses, there's something beyond this. Okay? So they also have eze achiza in the world of levushim. Okay? Ach, okay, this is his model here. Bahashpa'ah halazo heim osim kol hato'avot. But the question isn't what they sense, but it's how they interpret what they sense. You have an experience. Then you reflect upon it and you give that experience meaning. What meaning you give it is already a totally different story. Okay? So he's saying, with that achiza of the levush, right, they take it and they distort it. Okay? Osim kol hato'avot. Al kain. Okay. Now we're bringing this down to, like an example would be, okay, let's talk about righteousness and fairness and human rights. Okay? I don't want to get too political, right? I'm not a right-winger, okay? So that, right, so the laws and the constitutions, etc., are levushim for something, right? They're levushim for these concepts of fairness and of equality, right? So then what do you do with that? You can take it and try to apply it in a way that actually enhances freedom and human rights, or you can take those ideas and abuse them and use them actually to repress human rights and fairness.
Use
right?
what?
The wonderful ideas of equality and fairness, right, can be abused, right? So everybody can take it in whatever direction, whoever they think is doing it, right? That I don't want to get into, right? But it's clear that you can take levushim and abuse them, okay? So he says this is what they do, quote unquote, right? Al Kain, all right. He's coming back to the story of Vashti. Kasher Ra'u Anshe Knesset Hagdola Shetziva Achashverosh. Remember, he's weaving this into the story. Because we know that Anshe Knesset Hagdola were at the Mishteh, right? Because that's what Chazal say. So they actually saw Achashverosh say, bring Vashti. Okay? So this is a very strange event. That Vashti should come Aruma, only wearing the Keter Malchut, is a bizayon for the Malchut. Right? Queen Elizabeth does not partake in beauty pageants, right? You don't see her outside without a hat, right? She's the model for Kisi Rosh, right?
But she would be the parallel to Achashverosh.
What?
She would be the parallel to
Right, I understand, but whatever, even the
Vashti.
Queen, right? Let's say, I don't know, her mother, Lizzie, right? The Queen Mother, she also, right? She didn't, in any case, it would be Zayon to the Malchut. So they're sitting and they're looking, no, you have to understand that the basic concept here is that history is a book. The book is written by God, and that's why you can be doresh it. If history is just mikre, so then you can't be doresh it. You can only be doresh something that has meaning. You're assuming that there's meaning in it. So you take a book, you take psukim in the Torah, you assume that they have meaning, so that's justification for darshaning it, right? If you thought that some psychotic wrote it, that had some psychotic vision, so then there's no reason to be dorish it.
Into the monkey.
Right? All right, so there's no reason to be dorish it. The assumption is that the world is the book that God wrote. And that's why you can not only are you dorish psukim, you're also dorish history. And you dorish what happens to you. You have to be very careful. Right? The people, you have to be dorish your life. That you're part of a narrative that God writes. So he says, Anshe Knesset Hagdola, they saw what was happening, and they would dorish this. Right? Kasher Ra'u Anshe Knesset Hagdola, Shetziva Achashverosh, Shetavo Vashti Aruma, Hevinu, how would they dorish this? Ki Rotzeh Hashem Yitbarach Lanchil Lehem Yisrael Hitgalut Amitit, Beli Shum Levush.
Oh my God.
Right. You know, they understood that Achashverosh somehow is a symbol for God. The king is a symbol for God. It doesn't matter whether he himself is a Rasha or a Tipesh. But what he does is, and you have this double meaning in the Megillah, obviously, right? Every time it says HaMelech, etc., it's Melech Machem Lachim, right? So when they see Achashverosh demanding nakedness, they understood what is nakedness. Nakedness is a revelation. Right? It's a revelation without levushim. Right? There's nothing being concealed. Okay? And that's why people can't look. Right? If the revelation is too powerful, so you can't look. Okay? So they understood that this intimated, there was a sense, let's put it this way, there was a sense that something is going to happen. We sometimes live in times like that. I think more often these times we live in times like that. Where things can't continue as they are. Right? Something is going to happen. I don't know what it is, but something is going to happen. So when Anshe Knesset Hagdola are sitting b'mishteh shel Achashverosh and they see this, they say, something is going to happen. We don't know what it is, but there's some impending revelation. Right? There's something in the air. Okay, so what's the translation of that? What do people sense? So if you sense an impending spirituality, an impending divine revelation, so that excites you spiritually. But if you're not refined enough as a human being to sense it as divine revelation, you'll still sense it, but what will you sense it as? What will the levush be? The levush will be ta'ava. It will be erotic desire. Okay? And this is the connection, and he's about to do this here. V'azman hahu hayash bikshu anshe knesset hagdola la'akor yitzur da'arayot. Familiar with this midrash? It's midrash in Masechet Yuma. That after Korban Bayit Rishon, right, in the time of anshe knesset hagdola, God gave the Yetzer Harav, Avodah Zarah, and Gilui Arayot into the hands of Chazal, right? And they wanted to destroy the Yetzer Harav of Avodah Zarah, and they did, right? And that's why people don't have such a desire to be over Avodah Zarah anymore. But God also gave them the Yetzer Harav for Gilui Arayot, and when they had it in captivity, so they looked in all over Israel, and the chickens stopped laying eggs. Remember this midrash? They couldn't find a fresh egg in all over Israel, so they realized that you need the Yetzer, but they blinded it. So since then, the Yetzer Hara for Gilui Arayot is not what it used to be. Life isn't what it used to be. People, the Gemara says, people no longer have a desire for their daughters or their fathers or their sisters, right? So the Yetzer for Gilui Arayot has been subdued, right? But it still exists, okay? So, but what the Gemara is doing implicitly is tying the two of them together. The Yetzer for Avodah Zarah and the Yetzer for Gilui Arayot. And we do that in our language, right? Romantic language, like the popular romantic language, is he worships the land that she walks on, the ground that she walks on, and she's a goddess, right? This language and the popular use of language it sublimates religious language, and it applies it to romantic love, or worse, okay? So that's really what Chazal, I think that's pshat in the Midrash. So this is the desire of Ahashverosh, is a levush of the desire of God to reveal himself, right? Lilo levushim. V'tza'aku malachei asharet, ech yiyeh l'umot ha'olam tfisa be'inyan aruma. So malachei asharet come back, and they say that this type of divine revelation, this ecstatic divine revelation of losing all sense of, levushim are barriers. They're also a barrier between you and the other. I have my levush, you have your levush, right? So how can you experience this reality? Reality without levushim is a reality of loss of consciousness. It's loss of self-consciousness. You're just there. It's not in anything else. Okay? So how could they have that, right? Klum, הקריבו לפניך, כרים בני שנה. And here you get to the question of what the purpose of avodah is. Not only avodat karbonot, right? What avodah is in general. Ki Yisrael be'et shaya or be'elei me'itam asku ba'avodah b'korbanot kedei lekarev alehem ha'or b'chol yicholtam v'lachein mehara'ui shel atid yigalel Hashem yitbarak et oro b'galui hagamur mibli emtza'it, without levushim. Okay, so it sounds like what he's saying. It's a question of schar va'onesh. You worked hard throughout all of human history. So your reward is that you get a hit galut without levushim. But it really goes much deeper than that. What's the danger of not having the tzimtzum? Basically, it's talking about reverting the world back to the way it was before the tzimtzum. But the reason there had to be a tzimtzum in the first place is without the tzimtzum, then there's no room for the other. There's obliteration of humanity. It becomes just God in consciousness. And you see that, you can read the story of Ma'amad Har Sinai that way. Right? God reveals himself in Har Sinai, and the people sense their imminent destruction when they say, Daberi ta'imanu v'nishma v'aydaber imanu Elohim penamut. Right? They're sensing that their existence is in danger. Right? It's not any physical thing. Right? They just sense there's too much. Just think of it, you go to a simcha and you're so overwhelmed with simcha. Right? So you think you're going to burst. Right? That as a kli, as a vessel, you cannot contain it. So there's too much, there's overload. So then how do you get past that? So how are you going to get to a world without levushim? So here you get to the different models. The model of this world, le'et ata, in the world of the levush of the Torah, is that God is bashamayim, you're ba'aretz, and he's mitzaveh you. You have the model, I'm calling a model on purpose, but it's one way of organizing reality. It is not the exclusive way of organizing reality. But it's one way of organizing reality is God is the mitzaveh, and we're the mitzuveh. Right? That's one model, and that's the halachic model. Right? Obedience to the word of God. That is the halach. Okay? But that is not the ultimate model. The ultimate model is that there's no you and God. There's just being. Right? And you become swallowed, in a mystical experience, you become swallowed up in God. So there's no mitzvah and mitzvah in that. But in that, there's no you either. So how do you, in other words, you have the tipa in the yam, and the tipa goes back into the yam. So how does the tipa remain a tipa, even though it's in the yam? So that's through Torah mitzvot. By immersing yourself in the avodah, that reinforces in consciousness that there's me and God, and the levushim are experienced as very real. We don't say only levushim. That was created in the tzimtzum. That is very real. And by acting out the halacha and continuously giving in to the will of God, you imprint that consciousness of the reality of yourself as an autonomous being distinct from God. That strengthens you as a kli. So that when you have the hitgalut, the lov levushim, you can have this paradoxical reality that there's God is everything, and somehow you continue to exist in that. And that's what the Malachi Asharet, and say the Malachi Asharet, they are like holding up the halacha. But what about the goyim or in shomer halacha? In other words, they can't have the hitgalut lo levushim, not because lo magia lehem, because it's just a physical impossibility. But if there's avodah, and that's the significance of the avodah and the korbanot, together with the impending hitgalut of God without levushim. Okay.